Hey everybody, it's Pastor Tim. You know, as a kid, we as a family, Sunday nights we used to watch a show, 60 Minutes on CBS, 7 p.m. In fact, it's still on. That program featured 3 stories focusing on just parts of American life, international stories. What you're about to see is a 60 Minutes kind of a story, and it's from our own town, our own city of Milpitas. It's called 54. Which is the year that Sunny Hills neighborhood was established as the very first planned integrated community in the United States. So you're going to watch this documentary. It's made up of a lot of interviews. I just found it to be instructive, inspiring, and just fascinating. It's really going to help us too as we watch this and think about it and reflect on it to move further up and further into one of our mountains, one of our vision mountains. That is, as a church, to increasingly reflect our diverse and multi-ethnic community. So enjoy it, think about it, talk about it, and tomorrow join us at 3 p.m. for a panel discussion with the filmmaker and with several others as we reflect on this film and this story, which is just part of our own story, part of who we are. Listen, God bless you as you do. If you want to tune in tomorrow, go to our website, go to the events page, and there's a way to register right there. God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow, and sit back and enjoy.
Camera is rolling.
Ready? Hi, my name is Donnie Island, and I'm a long-term resident of Sunny Hills and Milpitas. And I guess you could say I'm kind of the instigator of this documentary.
Hi, my name is David Mosqueda. I was lucky enough to be born and raised in Milpitas. My family has resided in the Sunny Hills area since 1958, and I still have great fond memories of my youth, and I'm looking forward to making memories till the last dying breath in Milpitas.
Hello, my name is Henry Nichols, Jr., and I'm a longtime resident of Sunny Hills. My family bought this house in 1956, and Sunny Hills wasn't completed when we moved in. My street was called Valmy, which was the last street of the first track. And so many fond memories and good vibes.
So, why did I decide to do this documentary? I've always felt that our story needed to be told. There was something about growing up in Sunny Hills that I knew it was a special place. But it really wasn't until I graduated and started out into life, into the world, where I understood the impact that it had on my life. The close friendships that we had and still have to this day, they held me for so many years. There was something about it, and it wasn't until I read something on the website of the Sunny Hills United Methodist Church that talked about the history of Sunny Hills, and that's when the lights went on for me. I says, that is why that neighborhood was so special. And throughout this documentary, you'll hear stories. For me, it really laid the foundation for my life. The friendships, the sense of community, the family, the mentors. I mean, I can go on and on about my experiences there. But I truly believe, especially being a born-again Christian, and I believe this with all my heart, that God put his hand on Sunny Hills, and he says, I'm going to use this community to show the world about what living in unity is all about. We don't have racial hang-ups here. We love each other, and we got to learn and experience other races, cultures, even religions at an early age. And I think that was key to our upbringing, because racism is taught. You know, you're not born with it. And I believe because we got out and were able to learn about other cultures and races at an early age, that when that, I call it the disease of racism, try to creep into our lives, we shut it down because we knew that if somebody was trying to poison us with lies, that, hey, we're already out here living amongst other races, and what you're saying about this person because they're different is not true. So for me, that was key, really, to really laying the foundation for my life. We lived that saying, it takes a village to raise a child. We can go anywhere in Sunny Hills and feel safe. Parents corrected us, they wanted us. I always say that it's hard to be a failure in Sunny Hills because you had so many people pouring into your lives, investing into your lives. So you can walk down the street and, somebody might drop a little knowledge on you. You go around the corner, somebody show you some love, always encouraging you to be your best. And that spirit is very much alive to this day. Most of my friends, I'm 56 years old, most of my friends I've known over 45, 46, some 52 years, and we're still tight to this day. And I know that I talk to a lot of people at work, and they're like, wow, Donnie, you still friends with people from your childhood? That's the majority of my friends are from my childhood, and that's how special that place is. So throughout this documentary, you're going to hear so many stories of the love that was shared there. And I really also wanted to do this documentary to honor, I call them the Sunny Hills forefathers, who helped establish Sunny Hills. Ben Gross, Oliver Dunbar, Oliver Jones, and Albert Augustine, all who lived within blocks of me. And when you hear this story, you're going to be amazed. Thank you.
My family moved here when I was in the 4th grade, and I attended Pomeroy Elementary, which is just south of Sunny Hills, about across the street from Sunny Hills if you really look at it. And that's when I was first introduced to the Sunny Hills community and all the great people and the families that comprised what Sunny Hills is, and a place where people, black, white, Latino, even Asian Filipinos got together, and it was just one community that is united. And so that's my experience with Sunny Hills, and it's been lasting my whole life. I'm 33 years old now and have the opportunity to serve as the mayor of Milpitas, and everything I just talked about, all the relationships and the families and the unity is still there. It's stronger than ever. It is amazing. Every time I drive through Sunny Hills, I appreciate the history and what led to the unity. And in talking about The history of Sunny Hills, you talk about the history of Milpitas. Sunny Hills is the first neighborhood in Milpitas, one of the first neighborhoods. I know there are a couple, but I know Sunny Hills was right up there. And Sunny Hills was created to provide housing for a lot of the workers at our Ford factory here in Milpitas, the world famous Milpitas Ford factory, which is now the great mall of the Bay Area, the largest mall in Northern California with over 220 shops.
My parents came to Milpitas in 1959, and we were one of the very first Chinese families that moved here. I had an aunt and an uncle that moved over here in Dixon Landing in 57. And the reason we moved out here is because we're all flower growers. And so during that time, there was a lot of free land. So we moved in 59, and then shortly after that, the whole street, all of Dempsey Road, which is still there right now, were all owned by Chinese families. And what happened is that we stayed there for a while. I think it was back in the, maybe closer to the 70s. Eminent Domain came in and they bought everything out. And at that time, they changed all that to Sinclair Expressway, and now it's 680.
Growing up in Sunny Hills was a very special time. A lot of families came from everywhere. In summertime, you were able to take bike rides all over the neighborhood and drive into other neighborhoods. We had the McKenna Field down the street from us. A lot of people are able to join baseball, and the Mole family lived across the street. Mrs. Clay, her family came from Oakland. So we had a lot of diversity on Callan Street and on all the other streets. And over time, we bonded like nobody else. It was a safe place to be. And there's no other place like Milpitas.
Well, I've been here for 55 years. It's a wonderful community. My husband has been here for those years too, and they named the Sunny Hill Pathway after my husband, Robert Peckle. And if it wasn't for Donny Island, I don't know if I would even know that this was going on. And Dorothy Dixon and I have been here forever. And it seems like all of the older people not older, my age, have gone and passed. There's very few of us left.
I've lived in Milpitas since October 1962. My oldest boy started kindergarten with David Mosqueda. I knew the Mulls when they were little boys. Henry, I used to tutor in math. Peggy Pecco and I, she's my oldest neighbor.
Yeah, we've been together.
Been together for many years. My 3 kids were raised here in Milpitas, went through Weller, Thomas Russell, and Milpitas High School. And I worked for Milpitas High School for 27 years. Not Milpitas High School, Milpitas Unified School District for 27 years.
I'm David Barber from Milpitas, Sunny Hills, Wesley. I came here in 1967. My dad got a job at Ford Motor Company, and we were living in Monterey at the time. You know, I would say, you know, just average family, you know, white trash. I wouldn't say white trash, white recyclables is what I like to refer to it as.
United Auto Workers were a part of the Ford factory representing the labor union, and there was a leader, one of the greatest leaders in the history of our country on a local level, on a labor level, and later on a national level. But Ben Gross was the leader of the UAW, and he fought and advocated and worked tirelessly for civil rights, and in particular he was fighting for housing rights, which is really one of the most basic needs for any person or community, which is housing. And so he went through a tremendous ordeal and traveled the journey of 1,000,000 miles to create Sunny Hills. Sunny Hills, the neighborhood, the community where white folks and black folks and black folks and white folks can purchase homes next to each other in the same subdivision or neighborhood.
When I first came here, you know, one of the things is that when I was growing up in the 60s, I knew nothing about segregation. You know, I had friends that were down in Los Angeles and all over the place. They were all talking about the Watts rights and whatnot. But I had nothing. And I think for myself, I think we were just living in a bubble. I had so many friends, you know, white friends, Portuguese friends, Mexican, black friends of all, you know, people of all color.
But I came through Milpitas when I was a senior in high school. We had been brought down to Alum Rock for a field trip, and the bus driver drove us along the edges here. And it was the first time I had ever seen what I labeled the Golden Hills of California. I'm a Mission District, San Francisco, St. Peter's Academy for Girls, which is the poorest high school in the city. And yet, I wrote my senior thesis on the Golden Hills of California, and that was in 1956 in March. And I never expected to ever end up in Milpitas, but when we looked for a house, we ended up here, and that was in 1971.
Where I grew up, we were the only white family in the whole neighborhood, and my friends said they were coming to the colored kids' house. It was us. So race was always an issue there. So that's all we knew when we were growing up there. And when my mom uprooted and moved us here, I didn't even know what to think. Everybody, I walked around, everybody was playing with each other, and not just at school, where you hear some people are together at school, and out of school you separate. Together, and everybody was playing, and I didn't even know how to act.
My brother, we have another brother, my late brother Otto. He was everything. He was everything as far as like our childhood, as far as playing sports in the streets and running up and down the streets, getting kids of all races. It didn't matter. I mean, we didn't know what we didn't know. We grew up in that kind of environment, just like everyone loving each other. I mean, my mom, single parent of 5. We just love playing with each other. Like again, like what Scott said, taking something from him. It was at school. It was at home. We played up and down the streets together. Baseball, football, didn't matter what it was.
I learned a lot of things, but the most important thing that I learned growing up in Milpitas was the tight-knit nature of Milpitas in general. And I didn't really understand it because I was young and, we're riding makeshift go-karts and stuff. So, we were living in the moment. But as we grew older, and we started to learn things like respect for others, consideration of people's property, just basic human things like dignity and integrity and all this kind of stuff. And as I grew older, I started to become a little more acquainted with those concepts, and I took it with me and later in life. And the reason I mention it is because it taught me the difference between 2 words that were most important, that brought me back from a very dark place. Bear with me here. The difference between principles and values is what I learned in Milpitas. Principles don't change. The things that I learned from all of you didn't change. And so when I was in that place, those principles are what brought me back. If you can value money today, you can value a fancy car. You can value, other things that you shouldn't be doing. But principles don't change. They'll be the same as they are today, as they will be a year from now. And that's what brought me back. Because I know that people still cared about me. And all of you that know my background know that it's not a genetic thing. It's a family thing.
In my days, I moved in Milpitas in 1956. But you can ask for a better place to live.
Yes.
I had Asians, Indians,
Yes.
Spaniards,
Yes.
and all kinds.
Yes.
And we all lived right around this area.
In harmony. Huh.
And it's probably the only place in the world
Yes.
that this had happened.
Yes, I agree.
And we showed this world that it can be done.
Yes.
And we did it.
That's right.
No gangs fooled with us, let alone we had a damn good police force.
Yes, we did. Yes, we
At the
did.
time.
Yes, we did.
But this Sunny Hills my heart's in Sunny Hills.
Yeah.
This is where I grew up.
Yes.
And I made my family around the corner. And that's why I enjoy this.
Milpitas today is a unified city. Our crime rate is low. Our hate crimes are, I want to say, close to none. And if it ever happens, our whole community does not accept it. And that's why it doesn't really happen here. And I'm so proud of that. And it's because of Mayor Ben Gross, who laid the foundation for our city.
He was born in 1921 in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. At age 4, his father was killed in a dispute with a white farm worker owner. He had made an agreement with the owner to pick his field of cotton. And payment was agreed upon was a donkey because he needed a donkey for his own farm. So after completing picking the field, he took the donkey home. The white owner came to his house and wanted to take the donkey back. They got in an argument about it. He pulled out his gun and shot my grandfather dead. So my father started life really without a father. Later in school, when he was in high school, he had a white friend and they wanted to go see a movie. They paid for their tickets, they walked in, and they wouldn't let him go on the first floor. They had to go sit up in the balcony. He was 17 years old and saw the injustice of that at that early age and organized a boycott of the movie theater to change that policy. So that was his very first act against civil disobedience. In 1946, he moved to Richmond, California, and took a job at Ford Motor Company. Then Ford Motor Company hired blacks, but they were all put in the paint department. Why? That was the most hazardous place to work. And no one white wanted to work there because of the chemicals, the smells, everything was wrong. They just had one pair of cotton gloves that had to last them a week. But one thing grew out of that. Since there were only blacks in the department, and they had to have a union rep represent them, my father got elected to be their union rep within the first year of starting to work there. His progressive ideas ended up him being elected the first black in the United Auto Workers to become a bargainer. A bargainer is a plant-wide office, and the bargainers are the ones who negotiate the contracts. In 1952, the unions made a decision that fair housing was going to become a major issue. My dad at a convention of all the delegates in Long Beach, California, hand-carried a proposal that would authorize the union to spend time and money, battling for fair housing for all their employees. That resolution overwhelmingly passed. And so Walter Reuther, who was the head of the UAW, appointed my dad housing commissioner. What that did was authorize the union to pay money for my father to be able to work on fair housing. Ford Motor Company had announced that they were going to move the plant after getting an offer for Western Pacific Railroad that if you moved your plant to here in Milpitas, they would give the plant a discount on the property. So Ford started making plans to move their plant. My dad started making plans to have fair housing for all the Ford employees that would come here. So he was paid from 1952, before the plant moved here in 55, to research, study about the fair housing laws, HUD, Housing and Urban Development, and started making plans for interracial housing here to make it be the first planned integrated city community in the nation. He had many battles with that. He had the battle, the county had the battle, the city had the battle, the contractors had the battle, the builders. But he had been studying the law since 1952, and he knew what he had to do. He started relationships with different groups that would also want to support integration and fair housing. So the Quakers were one of these groups. The Teachers Union was another one of these groups. And it was all planned on how can we make this work. The contractors, there were 63 homes already built in Sunny Hills. They would not sell any of those to Negroes because it was in the covenant that wasn't allowed. And it's only because of Arnold Hughes that he knew that. So he had to come up with a strategy to be able to change those laws in the deed.
Thomas Russell was the first middle school, and what happened was everybody from all the other housing tracts in Milpitas or all over Milpitas, we all joined here. And this is how we met people from all over Milpitas, because this was the only junior high school.
Right. Different races, different nationalities.
My parents moved to Sunny Hills in 1956. We were the original owners of a house which was unheard of back then, especially being a minority. And Sunny Hills was very, very different from what I was used to. I lived in Richmond. We moved down from the Ford plant, when the Ford plant moved down. So it was like we had my next door neighbor was Caucasian, neighbor on the other side was Caucasian, neighbor up the street was Hispanic. We had all kind of nationalities around. Everybody got along, and everybody treated you like your own family.
My dad was actually, he was a young kid, like 15 years old, and joined the guerrilla forces, and he actually was in the war, World War II. He joined when he was a kid, and then he actually went to the Navy. When he went to the Navy, he never met any other races, but actually Filipino. So when he was in the Navy, he had met a few black people and a few white people, but he really didn't get along with black people at the time, because he was put actually in the same room as a black guy, and they just didn't get along. They would fight over little things, this and that, and one day even my dad had the guy that he was rooming with was working in the kitchen, had served him some food and put it on his tray, but threw it at him. So my dad got upset, and they started fighting, and they fought all over the ship, went all over the ship, and they just totally hated each other. But one day, my dad was getting picked on by these 4 white guys. My uncle was telling me the story. Was getting picked on by these 4 white guys. The 4 white guys are beating him down, calling him names, calling him jungle monkey, and all these, bad names. And so what happened was, the guy that he roomed with couldn't take it. Although he didn't like my father, he couldn't see someone getting abused like that. So he actually helped my father. After that, him and my father became good friends. Then, that went on for years. They were friends for a long time. My dad, when he got out of the Navy, he moved. He was looking for a home to actually rent all over the Bay Area, because they had come to Moffett Field. They traveled all over the world. When they came to the Bay Area, they were looking for a place to live. So my uncle had lived here, and he said, there's a place that they will allow you to live. And my father said, what do you mean allow you to live? So the neighborhood, he says, is very cultural, and it's different. There's a bunch of different ethnic groups there, so you'll fit in. And so when my dad went there, he came to the neighborhood. There was an array of people. My dad, he actually felt this could work for him. So they purchased a home there. It was like, I think it's 1969, I believe. So something like 1969, they moved there. From there, my mom, she just moved with him from the Philippines, and she never seen any other races. She was actually afraid. But my dad had explained to him that they're just like us. They're just here struggling, trying to make something work.
Growing up as the mayor's granddaughter, I never really, paid, much attention. I knew it was an honor, but, over time, when people in the community would, talk to me and tell me things about my grandfather, I felt really special. I have made many friends in the community. I played baseball with Mrs. Dixon's son. I've been kicked off of Henry Nichols' lawn several times. And I just know that even though I do not live in this community currently, it always feels like home when I come here. And when I leave, I actually feel pretty sad.
So while the building and contractors were doing everything they could do to exclude Negroes from being able to move here to Milpitas and Sunny Hills particularly, my father worked on his own strategies. And one of the strategies was involving the Sunny Hills United Methodist Church as his army. He was a founder in Sunny Hills United Methodist Church. By being a founder, that means that our pickup truck was the church. Every Sunday he would drive it down to Dixon Road and the main road. And this is back in 1954, 55. And the minister would stand in the back of the truck. The people coming there would bring their lawn chairs. And that would be our church service. Later, when the UAW hall was built in, even before that, after the pickup, there was an old airplane hangar, but it was rat infested, corroded, and they spent time cleaning it up. And that became the temporary church. Then later, when the UAW hall, United Auto Workers, was built, that became the home for United Methodist Church until I think in 1957, 58, the church actually got its own building still on Dixon Road. All this time, all these battles had been going on with the county contractors. They tried to jack up the sewer hookup fees 100 times the amount they originally were. So it would add to the cost of a home by another $6,000. And the home was only gonna be $10,000. Then they were gonna put $6,000 sewer line hookup charges on it. To fight this, my father recruited from the United Methodist Church the members there. They would come down in front of the housing real estate offices where they were trying to sell these already built homes in Sunny Hills. He would bring kites for us kids, and we would have kite flying. That's all, and I'm about 5, 6, 7 years old, flying kites, having fun. But all the time, the cars passing down Main Street would see 40, 50 kites up in the sky and go, what is this about? And so they would turn off, come down the road, loop around, see all these black kids, and drive by the model homes not going in. Later, I found out that that was one of the major concessions that the building contractors wanted in the negotiations with my father. Stop those kids from coming down and flying the kites. So during all this time, though, he was communicating then with Attorney General Pat Brown, Jerry's father, the current governor. He was communicating with Washington, D.C., San Francisco. He had stepped in when Willie Mays and the San Francisco Giants moved here in 1957, and they denied housing to Willie Mays in a white neighborhood. My father got involved in that battle. Later, Willie Mays came here to Sunny Hills to participate in the ribbon cutting opening of the shopping center in Sunny Hills. And then he came to our house for a barbecue. There's something called the kitchen debate that happened. It was between Vice President Nixon and the Soviet Union Nikita Khrushchev. What had happened is a housing exposition had been set up in Washington, D.C. the year before. Now this year, the Americans were to go to Moscow and set up their housing expedition. The day before that was to happen, Nixon called on American citizens to go down on your knees, turn to the east, and pray that the Soviet Union would open up its immigration laws to allow the Jewish citizens from the Soviet Union to be able to immigrate to different countries. And he wanted Nixon led a prayer that the Soviet Union and Khrushchev allow that to happen. Khrushchev was pissed off about this. So there's a famous kitchen debate that happened. But it also woke up America when Khrushchev said to Nixon, being covered by ABC, NBC, and CBS, only 3 channels then, tell me, what is the difference between how you treat your Negroes and how we treat our Jewish citizens? You don't allow them to live in any neighborhood they want. You don't have any integrated neighborhoods here. And my father yelled at the TV, yes, we do. So he got a hold of Walter Reuther, and a message was delivered that an invitation for Nikita Khrushchev to come to United States and see an integrated neighborhood in Milpitas. Russia had been wanting to build its first assembly plant and had been talking to Ford about that. So they did come here. And after being told they couldn't go to Disneyland, they came to IBM, the Milpitas Ford plant, and our home in Sunny Hills.
Us not knowing a lot about, Mr. Gross, and what he was doing for the neighborhood, we were just young kids. We didn't really understand a lot of that. We were just playing kids. We met a lot of different nationalities. We hung out. We never knew nothing about color, race, anything like that. All we knew, we were just friends. We were just us playing in the sand, in the park, just having a good time. We got older, as we became adults and teenager adults, we now understand what Mr. Gross has done for our neighborhood. We've met a lot of good friends. I got friends that, that it's been 20, 25, 30 years that we still hang out to this day. We hang out. Donnie's done a lot to keep that, going with us by starting that old school party with us. And that's one tradition that he started, and we love that thing, and because that's when all of us get together and have a good time, and our kids get to see our other friends that we grew up with. Our friends, kids are kids with ours, and they all call each other cousins, family. That's a great thing, and that all started because in Sunny Hills,
So one of the things that I learned later on in life, when I was 18, I graduated high school, and pretty much my whole life was in Milpitas, was when I started working. And the first job I got, it was working out in Sunnyvale. And so I'm in the workforce now, and one of the things I realized is I was working with mainly white people, Caucasians, which for me it's, I'm white, I'm Caucasian, so it's no big deal. But one of the things as I started working there and meeting people, one of the things that I noticed is that what I grew up with in Milpitas was not everywhere. And you start realizing that, wow, you're starting to meet people. You let them know that you have black friends, Latino friends. The type of music you listen to isn't so much what they would stereotype you as. And I wouldn't say it made me feel uncomfortable, but it was an eye-opener because I realized, wow, I'm different. I grew up in a different atmosphere. This isn't cool. And but I'm pretty easygoing. I'm not the kind of guy, I'm not a troublemaker or anything, so I get along with people pretty well. So I'm able to adapt and everything. But the one thing it struck me and it stayed with me was what I grew up with in Milpitas was not widespread. And so I appreciate the fact that God put me there, because later on in life after that, and just going through that experience, but learning that people are people, and that but the last 18 years of my life, I've been working in San Francisco with it's diversified. So I'm very, very comfortable there. I live in Sacramento now, very diversified. So it's almost like God brought me to places that He knew I'd be in later on in my life, and He's already prepared me for it because I'm able to get along with everybody.
I had the job of notifying the people before the Russian delegation, because they were going to look at 5 homes in Sunny Hills. 2 of them white, 3 of them black. The Dixons were our next door neighbors, Betty and Norman, and their 2 kids, Diane and Elizabeth. Down 5 houses down the street were the Butlers family. 2 blocks over were the Dunbars family. So I knew that the Russian delegation was coming. My father had given me a job, and that job was to go ahead and let the next family know that the delegation would be coming to their house. I'd set up my bike by blowing up balloons, wrapping them around my fenders. They give a boom, 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 boom. I'd taken playing cards, put clothespins on them, and to make the rah, 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 rah. So I'm 8 years old. My dad goes and tells us, go down to the Butlers. And all I could think of was, to arms, as I'm pedaling down the road. The Russians are coming, the Russians are coming. I shouted out, put Sunny Hills and Milpitas on the world map. We started getting groups of people from all over the world to come to Sunny Hills, to come to Milpitas, to see the first planned integrated neighborhood. Later, my father led a delegation to the Russia, Soviet Union, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, and it was all to promote how to get along better with all people. They talked about how to build cities, parks, sewer lines, electric, schools, communities that would work together to move forward. When they got to Moscow, they had an invitation to visit the Kremlin. And the State Department said, why are we getting an invitation to go to the Kremlin? You know, we've never had that happen before with our people-to-people tours. And they were told Nikita Khrushchev and my father were friends. So that's why they got an invitation. I can remember early on that Chief Murray, and I should tell you something about Chief Murray. He was chief of police. This used to be the city hall at one time for 30 years. He was the first, Milpitas was the first police department that required a degree from its police officers. It was the first police department that did psychological screening for police officers. It was the first police department that put women on its SWAT team. It was the first police department that did away with height and weight restrictions that could exclude women. You know, it had so many firsts. Chief Murray would come over our house weekly and discuss the ongoings of the city with my dad. One of those discussions was about the problem with two neighbors in the Sunny Hills community. Those neighbors were racist. They decided together that the minister who was also white from Sunny Hills Methodist Church and the chief of police, Murray, would go visit those two homes. So you have a white chief of police going to a white person's house, knocking on the door and telling them, you're not right for this community. Your racist attitudes are not who we are. It'd be better if you found someplace else to live. Chief Murray and my father also worked on other issues together. One of the ones I remember at an early age was one of the lieutenants or captains, but someone in a ranking position in the police department, was battering their wife. The wife would call into the police department. They would dispatch officers out to him, but that was their boss. What could they do? What could they say? So the battering kept on. Finally, the wife called Chief Murray's wife, told her what was happening. Chief Murray came over to our house. My dad and him sat down. They had me mix them a drink. And they came up with a solution. And that was that there was some training classes going on for police officers on how to handle domestic violence calls. So they sent this abuser to the training class. He had to go through like 10 sessions. And it wasn't just to train him. The purpose was he would come back to the department here and train all the police officers here. A couple of months later, Chief Murray comes over to my house and he shares with my dad that he had gotten a call from the wife to say thank you. The abuse had stopped. And he had apologized to her for those years of abuse that she had endured. They were so excited about it. They're like dancing and hooping and hollering because here they had found a different way to treat a problem in a positive way. It was a win-win for the wife, the city, the department, and Chief Murray made a huge difference in what this city became. Later, Chief Murray went to China to retrain the police department in China. Tiananmen Square uprising broke out. And everything just reverted back to how Chinese would react. They bought in the troops, they killed the people, and Chief Murray left. Later, when I saw him in the hospital, he felt that was one of his biggest failures in life. In 1967, Ford Motor Company went on strike. My father, well, let's go back to this. In 1958, he ran for sewer board, ran again sewer board 1961. He knew all about the sewer boards from going to the meetings since 1952. 1962 was the first time he ran for city council and won. 1964, he ran again and won. 1966, he ran again and got the most votes, which put him in the position of becoming the first black mayor elected in the United States by a majority, 90% of white people. 1967, there's a strike. Ford Motor Company goes on strike. My father is appointed strike captain. The strike captain's duties are to assign members to strike picket line duty. There was a rule, though, that in the UAW bylaws, that if you were behind in your union dues, you could not be assigned to picket duty. And so if you didn't do picket duty, you didn't get a stipend from the union. The strike went on. There were a group of Ford workers that lived in Oakland that were part of the Black Panther Party that went from commuting to Richmond, which was east, to commuting west to Milpitas. After 2 weeks, it's one paycheck. After 4 weeks, that's 2 paychecks. And rumors circulated through the plant that there was going to be a cross burning at our house on Hazen Street in Milpitas, that there were threats against my father and our family. We had converted our garage to a family room. Oregon was out there, desk, file cabinets, hand crank mimeograph machine, pool table, washer dryer. The Black Panther Party from Oakland set up security in our garage, family room. They loved being able to do their laundry while they served their time there. So that was our protection during the 68-day Ford Motor Company UAW strike in Milpitas. During all that time, from my father's election, he recruited other minority members and women to run for office. Gil Brooks from our local church became one of the first black school board members. They would, at Sunny Hills Church, they would end the service. Then the people right there would set up tables in the back of the room and start stuffing envelopes for mail outs to support my father and Gil Brooks and others in the next upcoming election. My father would not have been able to accomplish the things he did without the support of the United Auto Workers, Walter Reuther, president of the UAW. There were so many families that had an everyday role. The Joneses, the Jeffersons. Margaret Scott was my father's campaign manager. These people met on their own. They brought their neighbors and friends and families into it. They came over to our houses. We had barbecues that were fun for the kids, while the adults could organize, strategize of what the next step could be. Mort Levine became a spokesman. He was the publisher of the Milpitas Post. He both supported my father and also supported his paper by the stories he could write about that no one else could write about because they weren't here or didn't know about it. But after Mort publicized what was going on, Time, Life, Ebony, Jet, State Senator Al Alquist, Congressman Don Edwards, Lieutenant Governor, governors, attorney generals, all got involved. It was a great mutual support. They looked at this as we can be the light for others to follow. Growing up here gave me superpowers. I'm not affected by the outside world. What they try to tell me who I should be, because I know who I am. One of the main things I feel that I know my father insisted on was that the family has dinner together. Eating dinner together was mandatory. No excuses. Looking back on the meals we shared, going around the room, sharing our day, each of us, I realized gave me the basis of who I am today. I'm free. I have the power to create my own reality. Whatever I choose for that to be. My father and my mother were both so compassionate, kind, inclusive. My mother worked the Sunny Hills Co-op office, which was on the second floor of the UAW hall. She kept a little slush fund there where people would throw an extra quarter in. With your house payment only being $88, it didn't take that many quarters to pay for it. So if anyone ever had a problem, a struggle, they would use the little slush fund to make a house payment for them. Even the scary times we shared together. I can remember when Sputnik flew overhead. All the neighbors came out in the street. They're all pointing up in the sky as the satellite orbited across the horizon. No one spoke. No one said a word. Later, we started building our very first bomb shelter that I knew about. I think only 2 got completed. I think they've been turned into wine cellars now. When I was young, growing up, there was no wait till your dad or I'm gonna call your parents. If I did something wrong, I heard about it right then to whatever parent was there at the time. We called our teachers Mr. and Mrs. We called our parents, friends, Mr. and Mrs. as a show of respect. The main thing I learned from growing up in Milpitas and Sunny Hills is building trust. Building trust is the key of relationships. And you build trust by listening to other people. And you listen without interruption. Even when they pause. You listen without forming arguments in your head. How they're wrong with how they said that, or how you're gonna counter that point. That is not listening. In this community here, I learned that it's not as important what you say. The most important thing is what they hear. And that how you say it decides what audience will hear it.
So, for me, one of the first times that I experienced racism in my life was when I was playing sports when I was 16. We had a tournament up north, I'm not going to mention the city, and we were a multi-ethnic team, and we're an all-star team, and we were a good team. and we went up to play in this tournament. One of maybe a couple multi-ethnic teams that were there. I remember there was a team from South San Francisco, predominantly Hispanics, maybe a couple blacks, maybe a white, but they were really the only other team that was multi-ethnic. We get up there, and coming from Milpitas, we're just used to getting along with everybody. But we realized that one of the first times I realized that, like Danny said, the rest of the world was not like us. We got into, first game we lost, I remember, and it was kind of devastating for us. But something happened. One of the players' father on the team was a pastor, and he started praying with us before every game. And I'm telling you, something came over that team, which I now know to be the anointing of God, because we played at a level that we had never played at before. It was natural. We were running through teams easily, and we look back on it, and I remember people saying, what's come over us? And I know now that I'm a Christian, I know what came over us. But what happened with that was being a multi-ethnic team and playing in a town that I know now had some racism in it. It rubbed some people the wrong way. And so what happened was, now all of a sudden, I'm out in left field, and there's cars driving by, and people are yelling nigger out the window, which to me was so foreign. I mean, it really spooked me the first time I heard it. Like, what? And we all were like, this is crazy. We have never experienced this. There were some Hispanic friends on my team, and they were calling them names. And even the white people on my team were shocked. They're like, this is not how we get down. It challenged us. But we didn't respond with that same negativity. We didn't respond with hate. We didn't say anything. We simply let our play do the talking. And I tell you what, I noticed a shift in people. This is why I know God will always come to your aid when you respond with love. We didn't respond to those negative comments. We simply continued playing the game, and we won that tournament. But those same people that were driving by for days, calling me nigger, calling some of my other teammates, derogatory terms. At the end of that tournament, I noticed this one guy who was calling me nigger standing out right outside the foul line. He was cheering for us because something came over him. I'm telling you, God changed hearts that day. And I can look back now in my life and see the importance of me growing up in Sunny Hills and the importance of me getting that spirit of love and that spirit of unity in me, because what we went through that season of growing up in Sunny Hills for a purpose. It's not meant to be kept in Sunny Hills. It's meant to be spread to the world, to everybody we come in contact with. People, when they meet us and we start telling them our story, they're amazed. They can't believe it. Like, I can't believe you're friends with people you went to elementary school. Majority of my friends are. So that's the significance, and that's the importance of it. And that's why I know that God's hand was not only on Sunny Hills, but God's hand is on this documentary. Because this documentary is about the works of Ben Gross and the efforts of a lot of men that came together to form this first planned integrated community in the world. But God had a different purpose for it, in my opinion.